Those who have followed my work, in addition to just reading my papers, know that I had an encounter with UTU SHAMASH, King Nanner's son, and Lord Enlil's grandson. Almost exactly a year ago, he unwittingly confirmed what the Pleiadians are saying, that these beings are still deceptive and are coming to invade rather than to liberate, although they are trying to give us a different impression. But first, let me start with telling the reader how my connection with UTU started. Shortly after I had released the first level of learning, I got an email that stood out from all the rest of the tons of emails I usually get. It said the sender's name was UTU SHAMASH, and I thought, this must be a joke, so I opened the email, and sure enough, someone who claimed to be the old Syrian god had written a fairly long email to me. I was very skeptical at first, but read it through all the way. The message itself seemed authentic enough, but could of course have hypothetically been written by someone else. I read it through again, this time much more carefully, word by word, and found something peculiar which had also struck me during the first read-through. Even more so this time, though, although the letter was in English, and quite impeccably so. It had a writing style that was very odd. I have never seen anybody write like that. It's hard to explain without posting the letter, which I can't do out of respect. But the best way I can explain it is that the choice of words, and the way of making sentences, hinted at that he had translated the message in his head from another language into English. I can notice this thing more easily, perhaps, than someone whose first language is English, because English is my second language as well. I made the same kind of mistakes as UTU did when I was relatively new to the language. And sometimes I still do. It has to do with certain phrases that are native to Swedish. And when that is transferred to English, it's still understandable for an American or Englishman. But it's not the way it's normally said in an English-speaking country. I found that UTU did the same thing, although I'd never seen this kind of phrasing before. And the whole tone of the letter made me wonder if it could be authentic after all. I was still skeptic. However, next thing I did was to forward the email to Dr. A.R. Borden, whom after a while got back to me, and said it indeed was UTU who had written to me. A.R. had already told me a couple of months before that Ningashadathoth, who was born here on Earth a long time ago, and had been the Ša.AM.i ambassador to Earth until recently, had passed away here on Earth for unknown reason. I know they can jump bodies, but it sounded on A.R. that it was time to change ambassadors. And a new ambassador had to be nominated by the Ša.AM.i king. A.R. told me this more as a by the way, embedded into a lot of other things we were discussing at the time. Now, when I'd sent the email to A.R., he told me that UTU SHAMASH was the new ambassador to Earth. And he had arrived here on the planet quite recently. LPG-C already knew him from the annual Link meetings, where these human scientists meet with ET representatives from different star systems once, sometimes twice a year. So it was not surprising that Life Physics Group California, or LPG-C, was the organization UTU got in touch with as one of the first things when he came here. Also, according to A.R., some Ša.AM.i who had preceded UTU in arriving here, including some Ša.AM.i human hybrids of the first generation, had been captured and tortured by the Ša.AM.i rebel group, amongst LPG-C called the Earthbound. Eventually, these Ša.AM.i had managed to flee, and LPG-C took care of them and hid them in a cave somewhere in South America. One of UTU's first tasks was to take care of these ex-prisoners and send them back to Ša.AM.i. LPG-C, however, didn't have the resources to make the living standards acceptable for the Ša.AM.i refugees, and UTU found them in quite a bad shape. He was not happy with A.R. and LPG-C. According A.R. himself, anyway, after had got them back in shape, they were sent back to a platform in Space Red spaceship, somewhere in the solar system, for later transportation back to Ša.AM.i. When that mission was completed, UTU apparently asked A.R. if there were any Ša.AM.i-friendly humans he could get in touch with, because he had a message from the king, who wanted it posted and spread as broadly as possible. A.R. told him that there are not many humans who know the true story, and therefore would post such a message, but he mentioned a few names and WES Penre was one of them. Then LPG-C helped UTU setting up a human computer, and gave him an email address. They also had to tell him how human computers work. Although UTU knew the concept of human computers since earlier, he had never had to study the mechanics of it. A.R. said UTU was a little rusty with it at first, but learned quickly. And that was another thing I noticed with UTU's email. He didn't headline the email. And he didn't format the message the way a human normally does. It was kind of awkward in that way. He changed fonts and formatting in the middle of a message. So UTU browsed the internet and read some of the websites AR had recommended. And when he saw my level 1, he obviously decided that I was the person he wanted to pick first. Therefore, the purpose of the first email he sent me was for me to post the message from his father, the King of Ham. The tone in the email was pretty businesslike and quite to the point. He told me who he was, and that he found my website surprisingly accurate when it comes to describing the Hami. Hence, this was the reason he had chosen me to post the message from the king. There was an authority to the whole email, and he never asked me if I wanted to post it or not. It was more like a statement, such as "This is what you need to do." Then I was sitting there before my computer, thinking this whole thing over, pondering what I should do. I was wondering why Shamash had contacted me of all people, but realized that there certainly are not many people who would be willing to post his message for various reasons. I decided to go against AR's suggestion and wrote a reply to UTU, whereafter I sent it. Before I tell the reader what I said, here is the message the king wanted me to publish.
Let it be known by one and all. The work done by Mr. Penre is surprisingly accurate regarding Sam and its inhabitants. Sams are not invading the planet. Sams are returning to what once was a planet they inhabited in greater numbers than human, until humans began to outnumber Sams. This asymmetry continues today. Those Sams who returned and those who stayed behind are subject to the king, but reject royal authority and stand against the kingdom as enemies in kind and in fact. This will be realigned properly on return, and those who stand with them will be eliminated as pawns and as proxies, which is what they are, in hopes that the power and position now held will continue with the victory of their patrons. Nothing is further from the naked truth. Anything that is held to the contrary is contrived, dishonest, self-serving, likely the work of proxies. Believe them not, for everyone will be held contemptible by the beliefs held and by the heart that beats in their chests, this by the word of the king, my father. Sam is near. It will shine in the southern half first and then appear to the rest of Ki in a sixth of a royal set. The royal set is the number of the king. Sam will be red in color. Much is already known and anticipated. Much more will be disclosed and known about Sam by Sams already here. Truth will be known. Believe what you must and be responsible for what you believe, but get information from oracles, not from anyone else. By the Christ we are one.